Fen here again, and I'm going to show you how to put a grid on this digital reference so that you can use it for drawing. Having a grid is going to make it a lot easier to replicate complicated drawings, but also make sure that your proportions are correct. So the first thing that we're going to do is just make sure that you have watched the previous video on how to recreate your image so that you have everything in there that you need. If you didn't do that first. Now you're going to add your grid. So we are going to insert a table. There's a lot of ways that you can do this using the rulers and things, but I found that inserting a table is one of the easiest ways to add a grid to your image. So we are going to insert a table, and now we have to figure out how many columns and how many rows we need. So we have a space that's 5.5 inches wide by 8.5 inches tall. Some of you have a space that's 8.5 inches wide by 5.5 inches tall. So you're going to take whatever number you've got and round up to the nearest whole number. So if it's 5.5, that's now 6. And if it's 8.5, that's now 9. So mine's 5.5 inches wide. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because we took 5.5 and we rounded up. And if you have something that's 8.5 inches tall, that's now 9. So we're going to have 9 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So now we have a grid that is the correct size. So I'm just going to pop this into the corner here and then format my grid. So depending on how big your screen is, you might see formatting options, you might not. But if you don't, they're in the more options right here underneath the share button. So click those 3 little dots and click format options. That's going to allow you to change the size of your grid. So our grid needs to be the same amount of inches wide as we have columns. So we have 6 columns, so it needs to be 6 inches wide. And the height needs to be the same number of rows. So we have 9 rows, so it needs to be 9 inches. That automatically makes it the perfect height and the perfect width. It also makes all of our boxes squares, so they're 1 inch wide by 1 inch tall. Perfect for our grid. Now you can just click out of that. Your grid is done. Some of you might want to change the color of your grid. So if you click in on your grid and make sure that the whole grid is selected, not just one line or one square, you can change the color of these border lines. So I like to make it something that's really easy for me to see. And on something that is really dark and bright white and grayscale, it's hard to see black or white lines. So for some of you, it might be easier to see red. For some of you, it might be easier to see blue or yellow. You have to pick the color that is easier for you to see. So I'm going to go with this bright orange here and just make it a little bit thicker. The great thing about a digital reference is I can always go back into here and I can make those lines thin again. Or if I really have trouble seeing color, I could make those lines black to start or a dark gray so I can draw in these areas that are white, and then I can switch it to white while I'm drawing the areas that are in darker spaces. So it's really important that you put this grid on, you have it sized correctly, and then you have it a color that'll work for you. You can always print this off as well. That might help you if you have a printer to have your image right next to your drawing space. So keep that in mind as well. When we did our lemons, I added text at the top, which was A, B, C, D, E, F. And then down the side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If that's going to help you, feel free to add a text box to do that too. Okay, so now your image has a grid on it, and then your next step is going to be to draw the grid on your paper.